did. And and I guess I am to blame for starting this. Actually, it was Jim who started it.
Well, I'm glad I
mentioned
did.
it. He mentioned
And everybody here is glad I did.
He mentioned it, and we were talking one day. He stepped over to the house, and actually, it's kind of a unusual thing. I had a fellow from the Netherlands contact me and said that he was looking for a few pictures to add to this compilation of music that he was putting together. So I found some of the pictures of the Jades and sent it to him. And about a month later, he sent me this, which is a 3-album set of all the works of all the garage bands in this area that recorded with Fenton and some of the other labels.
Unreal.
So, and he did it, and he put them on CDs, and I was absolutely amazed. It's really, really, it's got all the bands that we saw when we were in high school, and they're from every little town around Michigan, and they all were kind of doing the same thing we were doing. They were playing at their high schools, and they were, and I got the biggest kick out of it. They called it mid-60s Michigan teen punk. So here's the start of punk rock bands, I guess. I'm not really sure, but this is sold all over the world through his website. And we haven't seen any royalties, I don't think, have we? None of the rest of the bands have either, but a lot of these bands, every now and then you bump into somebody that was in town on the Renegades or the Sheffields, or
sure.
It's amazing.
And also, there's times when, if we were recording or practicing there, and another band would come in, we would know them, you know,
Yeah.
but they were going to record.
Yeah.
And if they needed a bass player, or if they needed something, they used what we had there.
Yeah.
Because we kept our equipment a lot of times there, because a lot of the times we just used that for practice because of the noise level that we were making anywhere we used to try and practice.
So anyway, that's how Jim actually got started. He saw this and said, this is pretty cool, maybe we ought to do this. And so then he wrote me into it, and I thought, at the time, I didn't
Want to get Bill.
Anybody else. Bill was going to be in Canada camping. He came back late last night, or yesterday, and one by one, we got in touch with everybody, and it's really great to see everybody after all these years.
A lot of those bands at 2 o'clock at ribbon cutting will be on stage. Of course, the first ones going on stage will be, like I said, some of the Jades. But some of those bands will be there that recorded on that album at 2 o'clock.
Floyd worked for Great Lakes Recording Studio for all through high school. I worked for a few months, maybe about 8 months. Part of the deal was we needed these great big huge giant amplifiers. My folks weren't going to let me have one, so Dave came out and said, well, he can work for me I'm putting in this big Wurlitzer organ, and I help putting the pipes in and so on. So I got this, Floyd and I actually went together and bought this Sun amplifier. It was $1,500 or something. That was about this big.
And that's 65.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah, it was and Phil bought one, Rich bought one. We got a good deal through Dave. That's when he became our manager.
That's when we really got loud.
And that's and then we had to get a big PA system. But Floyd knows a lot about the recording studio. He spent a lot of time there, a lot of evenings there setting up bands that came in from different parts of the country.
Well, my lead amp has 250 watts. Yankee Stadium uses 100 watts. Put something in perspective, yeah.
Well, ours is the 1000S, so ours is 100,000 amps. So.
Yeah, ours was huge, but we were running a bass and an organ through it, had 2 15s in it, and at that time it was probably one of the biggest amps you could get. But Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'd like to give a little about history here. It was in 1965. Phil, Craig, and I were sophomores. Floyd was a sophomore at Sparta High School. And at the time, I think it was Craig that sort of initiated it. He heard that there were two guys in his class that played electric guitar, and that was Phil Suckup and myself. And so Craig organized this exploratory meeting about forming a rock and roll band. This was in September '65. Phil and I attended, a couple other people came there that wanted to be in the band, but I wanted to replicate the Beatles and have a band where everybody played an instrument, so I think there was a consensus that to be in the band you had to have equipment. And, Craig, that was most important. Craig didn't have any equipment, but thought he could learn to play the bass guitar and control his parents into buying him a bass and an amp. And at the time, we enlisted as our drummer Roy Johnson, who was a year older than us. So the initial members of the band were Craig, Phil, myself, and Roy Johnson. And that was in September '65. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the history of it. Before we go on, I think each of us should say, introduce yourself and say what instrument you played in the band, how long you played with the band, why you got interested in joining the Jades or rock and roll for that matter. So I'll just start by saying again, I'm Rich Siegel. I played rhythm guitar and sang. Craig and I shared most of the lead singing, and when I wasn't doing the lead singing, I was harmonizing. And I'm a former founding member, along with Phil and Craig, and three of us pretty much stayed through the duration of the Jades until it was about almost 2 years later that we sort of dissolved and we all went our different ways. And what influenced me most, I think, would have to be the Beatles and the British Invasion. I mean, I used to listen to rock and roll as a kid, and Elvis and Bobby Fenton and all that sort of thing. But when the Beatles came, it was like I was hit across the head. It just smacked me. I thought they were the greatest thing ever, and I wanted to learn guitar. I had taken about a year's worth of piano lessons about at age 10, and had, took some lessons on the cornet and clarinet that lasted a few months each time, but I abandoned all that. But I got myself a guitar and took some lessons, learned some guitar chords and things like that, and that's about where I was when I got my, I bought a little amplifier and electric guitar when I was about 15, and that was about the time the band got started. So Craig, do you want to mention what you played in the band and when you joined and all?
I played bass and shared lead vocals with Rich, did harmonies. I actually was taking guitar lessons at Carl's Guitar Studio on West Fulton Street, classical guitar at the time. And I think I kind of did the same thing that Rich did when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It was I wanted to change. I don't know who was playing classical music. So I went. Matter of fact, that it was shortly after we had a get together about forming the band. I went back to the guitar lesson and talked to Carl, who was my teacher, and told him I wanted to play bass. And he said, well, actually, classical guitar, because you finger pick bass correctly to play the bass, which I never did. I always played with a pick. But yeah, he said you could learn that first. So I found a bass guitar and an amplifier, and I went home and talked to my parents, and they thought I was crazy. They weren't going to have any part of it. But I worked on it through the summer, and finally I started taking bass guitar lessons and got rid of the classical. And so that's how we got started.
Phil, why don't you tell about what you played and what instrument you played and how you came in?
I played lead guitar, and
Mighty fine too, by the way.
He had lots of good equipment.
self-taught, never took a lesson. did not have an ear for music, but I could get, at that time, there was instructional records on how to play something. And so I bought those, and if you remember our first performance, we did not sing.
No.
We played all instrumentals.
Yeah.
And they were my lectures. And it was bass, rhythm, lead, and drums. And
All on a record.
it was all on
Yeah.
a record. Each part was on a record.
Yeah.
And so this record was going back and forth. And you study yours, right? I'll study mine, you study yours. And
By the way, that record is available on. It's called
Royalties.
Play Guitar with the Ventures, Volume 1.
I think I still have it.
Okay.
But, and I also still have my equipment.
Yeah.
I have, I'm not going to sell anything. So,
What did you had a
it's a Gibson.
Gibson GS?
SG.
SG.
And went through a number of amplifiers because I would break speakers, but my heart was always in folk music. So,
Chet Atkins.
You wanted us to play Chet Atkins all the
Yeah.
time.
because I enjoyed finger picking guitar instead of just with a pick. So I finger picked the guitar.
Yeah.
But, both, you know.
Yeah.
But no, and then the new sound was a 12-string guitar. So the band had to have a 12-string. And I had a gorgeous Gibson LG1 that I traded in for a 12-string.
Echo.
Which was an Echo. But on the Gibson, I traded in, I wish I had back, because that's a collector's item now. And, yeah. And so then, a while later, for my own amusement, I got into the 4-string banjo. And,
Well, that was after the Jades.
I
We didn't
had-
incorporate the banjo.
No, we never incorporated the banjo. No, that was just for my own
Just
fun.
North Carolina.
But anyway, that's my history. I feel, I don't know your dates, but I felt that when we graduated, basically, the band was done, except for, I think we had
You're right.
one party at Christmas time, when we were out of college, or in college, but came back and had a party. And,
Yeah. Was that at Joyce Grimes?
no, that was at Pacific Center. Because
You're
right.
that's,
Yeah.
because that is where I said goodbye to Craig Yates.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he left
Yeah. For now. Yeah.
and never came back.
Yeah.
There were
Sparta
6 in
No.
our graduating class that died.
I remember
Small
Craig
town.
too.
Hmm? Yeah, and almost everybody else in the band went to service.
We do.
We do, if you wanna walk over and take a look.
Yeah, that's,
Well, I've been to the wall in DC many
Yeah.
times, and you can touch 3 of the guys
Yeah.
like this.
I know.
So,
one of the things that she's saying is the museum is over there with the historical stuff and his uniform.
His
Oh.
uniform is there.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Probably Bruce's too.
Bruce is over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce's is
We have
there.
Craig.
Oh,
But
okay.
we have Craig's display as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larry Decker.
All right, let's move on. Bill, why don't you give your history about how you came to join the band and your the sacrifice you made?
Yeah, I was a latecomer. They had Roy Johnson. I wish he was here. If he's here, I don't recognize him. But he started out as a drummer, and various reasons he left. So they were looking for a drummer, and I was not a drummer. But it sounded fun to me. And, I don't know how I was even approached. I'm sure I probably went to Craig and said I can play drum. I'm sure I lied.
Hey, he was a guitar player.
I started playing guitar when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I had some really nice equipment. But of course, you needed drums to be a drummer. That's one of the key things. So I had this is just a little noteworthy thing that these guys all kind of get in me about. I had an Ampeg guitar amplifier that my father had got for me, and I had a Gibson 1962 Gibson Les Paul blonde guitar. They still groan. You know? So I went to our buddy Larry Middleton down in Middleton's music studio, and he was happy as could be to help me walk out of there with a nice slinger on drums. And I was happy as could be, and I had drums, and I was in the Jades. And I was a year behind them, of course. So, so it was the greatest thing I ever did. And I would do it again. The guitar today is worth about 12 grand, but it's worth it.
Guitar, you don't have the guitar.
I had nothing but fun. There was no bad times, argument once in a while. But the neat thing, with all these guys, we always got along. You know, they'd get mad for one night or something, and you know, storm out. Things like that, but it never affected, in all these years, I don't think there's a hard feeling within it.
Never was.
The reason that they kept me wasn't because I could play guitar so well, but I had the truck to haul all the gear.
That was a plus. I had a nice garage for practicing.
That was definitely a plus.
All right, our last member, Floyd, who joined us, I think about lasted with the 5 of us here. It was about a year after the Jades had gotten going. We just had 3 guitars and a drum, and Floyd presented us with the opportunity to get a person to play the keyboard. So Floyd, tell us about your story.
Well, my grandmother was a church organist and piano player. She wouldn't let me go out and play with the boys. I had to learn to knit, crochet, and play the piano. I wasn't very good. I wanted to play sports. Got to, freshman, maybe elementary, I got to learn the clarinet, which I hated. I wanted the trumpet because my mother liked Benny Goodman. So, like Greg, I didn't like that music at all. My family background is all country. I've got cousins that wrote country. Johnny J, they call him, but it's Irv Johnston. I think he's in the Country Hall of Fame now.
Still going.
Still going.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 90 years old.
Yeah.
I liked the Jades, and I'd seen the Jades, and we would have choir practice, and on the stage, offset the choir practice room was a piano, so I'd just sit there and play the chords of the latest songs that were out there and let these guys hear what the just trying to, I'm here. You know, well, that's how I got asked. And of course, I didn't have any equipment. Well, then you go to your parents and they go, huh? You want to do what? You haven't touched this in how, you know. Well, I got my equipment.
Well, it's like buying a car nowadays.
Yeah.
Really.
And I was working at the Sparta Theater at the time, and Dave Conrad bought the place and set up the recording studio. So I started, besides cleaning, servicing, selling popcorn and stuff, I would set up for the recording studios. I learned how to balance and, equalizers and, all sound checks and stuff like that. Then I was a studio musician also. So, I don't know if any of you remember Terry Knight and the Pack? They became Grand Funk Railroad. They were there. We met so many great musicians there. Del Shannon was there. I mean, it was, you got to see these people and you got to learn. You got to see how they went through how to get to places. But if it wasn't for Rich, Craig, and these guys, I probably wouldn't be here. When Bill says there's family, we are family. I had a tragedy in high school. And if it wasn't for these guys here, I probably wouldn't be here. Seriously. They were the family.
Well, thanks. I'm just going to give a little nutshell of some of the early days, and then we're going to, if any of us want to chime in and have some anecdotes or stories you want to tell. But to begin with, we rehearsed at our family's homes, oftentimes in the living room or dining room. And we were loud. That was the main complaint. The main complaint was that we played loud, you couldn't hear us sing, and we drove our parents and our siblings crazy. Most often, I think we played at my parents' rec room, basement rec room. And later on, we would rehearse at a vacant house next to Craig's family out on Camp Lake. That was convenient because I don't think we disturbed too many people.
Just a big party.
Yeah.
Most park out in front and drink beer. They thought there was a party going on.
None of us could read music, so the way we learned our songs was to listen to records and pick out the guitar parts and the chords and listen to the words and try and, oftentimes you couldn't make out what the words were. So we would just mimic what we heard and learn the harmonies. That's how we learned most of our songs. And most of our songs are just, we played covers of popular songs of the day by the Stones and the Beatles and the Kings and the Animals. And we rehearsed, I don't know, a couple times a week for the first few months. I think our first gig was a non-paying gig. We played at the Spanish Fiesta at Sparta High School. They stuck us up in that balcony behind this, the old school, behind that second floor bleachers there.
That was your first gig?
That was our first gig. Then the second gig, we played for a pep rally in front of the whole student body. That's the time we played those two instrumentals.
Yeah.
Where we learned the Walk, Don't Run from that famous LP by Play Guitar with Adventures. And we played that, and we played Flag Bow. That's my drums. And from there, we kept practicing. I think we played a couple of times for free at some friends' homes. And I think our first paying gig was at Sparta High, a Friday night dance. That's the first time we ever earned any money.
Yeah, we were hot.
After football?
I don't know, it was late fall of '65, early winter '66.
Well, that's when we could get, that's when we got our driver's licenses.
When did you turn 60?
March, first part of March of '66.
My most memorable show, I got to put this in.
Go on.
For a 14, 15-year-old kid, 15 I guess, was in the cafeteria, okay, and it was a dance, obviously, and we had a little stage set up. But on the left and right-hand side of me were Ginny Brown and Della Quackenbush dancing in what they called go-go skirts in these cages the whole time. And I knew at that moment that my life was worth it. To this day, that and the place. I also got to say, just before we move on, if it wasn't for guys like Bob Stiles, okay, who did the choir and the band, and he did everything, and this guy right here, Arnold Potter, we would have never been able to do what we did. We had so much help from these guys, and I never forgot that.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you tell us how music changed and kept you guys? I remember you as clean-cut guys and doing well.
Good work.
Did you see that snap too? But tell us truly how music has touched your lives, all from the time you were in high school till now.
Are you talking about sex?
What's that? You're talking about what? I heard that word here. What is it? Sex?
It kept me out of trouble with these guys.
Yeah.
You know, high schools when you get into doing stupid stuff, and I'm sure I did my share of it. I don't know. It just kind of kept me grounded, And they were all too. We didn't do anything reckless.
We didn't do any drugs. And maybe that's why we didn't go to that.
That was our downfall.
We were busy.
Huh?
We didn't have free time.
Couldn't
We
afford
had-
it.
We had time to practice and to play our music, and that is where we all focused on. We didn't have time to get into the wrong stuff, shall we say. That probably could have happened. I know some of the bands, it did that.
Well, we also worked. We had to pay for the equipment that we had, you know? It's, when you buy, like I say, a $1,500 amp, and you're 15, 16 years old, your parents are on your butt like, holy crap, you better be working.
What did it cost you to record at the studio?
What did we, the first one?
My
we
dad-
did,
my
I
dad
know we
bought
bought-
the
I
first-
know we paid for the
Didn't I
record.
buy the first one?
We worked on an arrangement where we didn't pay for the recording time at all. I think Floyd and Craig got us the recording time
Yeah.
for free the first time. The second time, we agreed to pay Slade before the Friday night film twice, I think, in return for a couple hours recording time. So it was a tit for tat kind of thing. So recording time, we never paid for it, but we did have to pay for the pressing of the records.
Yeah, seemed like $500 when we had to.
Remember, my
beg
dad
our
bought the
parents.
first one.
Did he?
He paid for the first
I think he did.
batch of records. Yep.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah, he covered the cost of having the record.
I know that our first record, we ordered 300 copies. And our second record, because we were so confident, our second record's gonna be so much better. We ordered 500.
Still available.
Still available.
That's the original. Waiting for the second printing.
That's kind of like the second coming, you know.
I told my mother to go up in the attic and look, because there's probably boxes.
I'll give you a buck apiece.
Well, we had a lot of opportunities to play at high schools all around here. At Friday night dances, we would either play at Sparta. I remember playing at Rockford and Cedar Springs,
You remember the Black Watch?
Northview, and pardon?
You remember the Black Watch?
I don't. No, we were rivals with most of those bands. They were taking our jobs.
We also played at graduation parties,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
all-nighters.
And did Battle of the Bands at Tri-County High School. I think we went up there and played one, but just a lot of high schools around, we played Friday nights. And we got a job in the summer to play up at Hess Lake for I think 2 months out of the summer. We went up there and played 3 nights.
We won the Battle of the Bands the first round,
Yeah, we should talk about
semifinal,
that.
$125. They gave us a check. We cashed it at the bow tie. But we took it in there and they cashed it for us.
You're only 16 years old, they wouldn't let us in
Right,
the door,
but that's where we cashed it.
That's a good story. That's a good story.
That's true Spartans.
I think we should talk,
Where's the boy tech?
I think we should talk a little bit about the Battle of Bands, because that was one of the high points. It was in our second year. Bill, Floyd were in the band at that time.
We got screwed over.
And there was a Battle of Bands in Grand Rapids at a teenage dance club called The Place. That was on, Plymouth Road?
Plymouth.
Fuller or something.
It was huge.
It was a roller rink as well.
And what they did was they had some preliminary rounds, I think 5 preliminary rounds with 6 bands each. And on a Saturday night, the 6 bands would play. We got, in our first preliminary round, we came out on top, as Bill said, we got some money out of it. And that was our way of going on to the final round, which occurred like, a couple months later. Anybody want to talk about
That was
March
hosted by
20
Jack Hoppus.
March 25th, 1967.
is that right?
There's
Yeah.
one of the flyers, the copy of it.
And
So that was about the biggest audiences I think we ever played to, was at the Place, especially at that final. There was about 1,000, huh?
Oh, over 2,500.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
a lot of kids there.
That's a big place.
and we were excellent.
Especially the organ.
The player was killer. He was sweating. Dan chance to find
There was a question.
Yes,
back.
question.
Yeah, I can understand where Mr. Stiles was helpful, but I didn't know about Mr. D.
Mr. D was always there.
He hired us.
Just like he is now. Everything ever happened in Sparta in the last 30 years,
Really
he's
gave us a
been there.
good start in school, and then we started getting into Friday night dances and.
Oh,
It was a
okay, so that was
Spanish-
Mr. D.
Spanish
was that?
Fiesta, he let us play Spanish Fiesta. That was-
Yeah, we did a couple of them, and that really set us off.
So just very supportive,
Yeah.
as always.
Can I just take a second? We got the Grand Marshals here for the parade, and I want to just introduce them just quickly. These guys, they remember, and some of the other teachers that are here. That's one of the nice things about Sparta. We got good teachers. Always have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one here is the name of Shirley. Yeah. Go. They're going to be on the front car in the big parade. Those girls over there are going to take care of them.
Horse-drawn carriage.
And also, they're the founders and starters of the Historical Society of Sparta. They bought and restored.
Pretty stupid.
Pretty stupid. That's when you came to me.
It was really more naive.
Yeah, it wasn't stupid, it was naive. You thought the school was gonna take it after you got it done. And they came to me and said, the school don't want it. So we auctioned it.